I am Anita, and I am 58 years old. I spent my life teaching French grammar and culture to 15-year-olds, and I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. Then came the fateful dinner when I met my son's French fiancée, and she made a catastrophic mistake. She thought I was just a harmless American old lady. Before I share how a language can become a weapon of silence, I'm curious to know where you're listening to this story from. A cozy kitchen or on your commute home? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear how I found my own voice again, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps me keep telling stories. My life in the small town of Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, was a life of quiet routines. Mornings in the garden with lavender and tomatoes, afternoons reading in the worn armchair that belonged to my husband Daniel. Our little clapboard house was full of books, old French novels sitting beside volumes of Robert Frost's poetry. Daniel passed from cancer 5 years ago, and after 30 years of teaching, I'd retired too. Teaching French at the local high school had given me joy, but had also taken so much of my energy. I wanted to spend my remaining years slowly, quietly. I thought I'd seen it all from teenage rebellion to small family tragedies. I was wrong. My son Ethan was my hope and my pride. He is 32 now, a successful lawyer in Boston. He has Daniel's heart, kind and sincere, sometimes a bit naive. One Friday afternoon the phone rang. Ethan's voice was filled with a tone I hadn't heard in years, a boyish excitement. "Mom, I have amazing news," Ethan said, and I could picture his smile through the line. I proposed and she said yes. Her name is Chloe. She's from Paris, Mum. She's incredible. My heart swelled with a warm joy mixed with a vague, fluttering anxiety. A French girl. I pictured sophistication style, a world far removed from my quiet town. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. I can't wait to meet her." "We'll drive up next weekend," Ethan said. "Chloe is so eager to meet you." After I hung up, the house felt peculiarly silent. The joy was still there, but the anxiety grew wings. I wanted to make a good impression. I was not a woman of the fashionable world. I was a retired teacher living alone with my cats and my garden. I decided I would cook a proper dinner, something that showed American hospitality with a touch of finesse, a pot roast perhaps with vegetables from the garden. I started a shopping list, my mind racing with questions. I called my cousin Gary, who lived an hour away. He's a retired photographer, my only real confidant since Daniel died. "Anita, you sound stressed," Gary said after I shared the news. "I just want it to go well." I sighed. I don't know what she's like or what she'll think of a place like this. "Just be yourself," Gary said, his voice warm and familiar over the miles of phone line. "That's who Ethan loves. And remember," he added a teasing note entering his voice, "your French is still sharper than a chef's knife. You could probably quote Proust to her and leave her in the dust." I laughed, a real one that loosened the knot in my shoulders. I have no intention of quoting Proust. I just want to be a nice, normal mother-in-law to be. "Normal is overrated," Gary said, "but you do you, call me after." The week passed in a flurry of cleaning and planning. I polished silver that hadn't been used in years, debated tablecloths, and finally settled on the simple blue linen one. I wanted things to look nice, but not like I was trying too hard. The trying too hard part was all happening inside my head. Saturday arrived sunny and clear. My heart was a drum in my chest as I watched for Ethan's car from the kitchen window. When his sedan pulled into the driveway, I wiped my hands on my apron and took a deep breath. Ethan got out first, his face breaking into that wide, easy smile that always melted me. And then she emerged. Chloe. She was, as Ethan had promised, stunning. She had that effortlessly chic look I associated with French magazines, sleek dark hair, a simple but elegant cream-colored sweater, and trousers that looked like they cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She moved with a certain grace, a confidence that seemed to alter the very air around her. Ethan bounded up the steps and wrapped me in a hug. "Mom, you look great." Then he turned, his arm extended. "This is Chloe. Chloe, my mother, Anita." Chloe approached, a perfect smile on her lips. "Enchantée, Anita," she said, and leaned in to offer the European double-cheek kiss. Her perfume was subtle and expensive. Up close, her eyes were a cool, assessing grey. They flickered over me then, over the porch, the front door taking everything in with a speed that felt clinical. The warmth of her greeting didn't reach them. "Welcome, Chloe," I said, hoping my voice sounded steady. "It's so lovely to finally meet you. Please come in." The tour of my modest home felt endless. I watched her gaze linger on my comfortable, slightly shabby furniture, on Daniel's old bookshelf, on the collection of ceramic chickens on the kitchen windowsill. A silly gift from a student years ago. She nodded and smiled, murmuring, "Charming," and "how quaint." But the words felt hollow like polished stones. Dinner was where the first real fissure appeared. I had made the pot roast with rosemary potatoes and glazed carrots. The food was simple, hearty, the kind of meal that had always made Ethan happy. "Ça a l'air délicieux," Chloe said as she sat down, switching to flawless, almost accentless English. "It looks delicious, Anita. So homely." I knew she meant homey, but the choice of word with its other connotation felt like a tiny pinprick. "I hope you like it," I said. Ethan was beaming, pouring wine. He was in love, and it made him glow. He hung on Chloe's every word. She spoke of her work in luxury brand consulting, in Paris of galleries and summers in Saint-Tropez. Her stories were peppered with casual French phrases directed at Ethan. "C'est magnifique, mon amour," she'd say about the wine. Or, "Tu es si attentionné," when he passed her the butter. Each phrase felt like a little flag she was planting, marking her territory of European sophistication, a territory where I was clearly just a visitor. I asked polite questions about her family. She gave vague answers about her parents being in finance and living in Neuilly. She had no siblings. It was all very smooth, very surface level. When Ethan got up to clear the main course plates, Chloe and I were left in a sudden thick silence. "And you, Anita?" she asked, her smile fixed. "Ethan tells me you were a teacher," she said, teacher the way one might say file clerk, a necessary but unremarkable occupation. "Yes, for many years," I said, "at the local high school." "How admirable," she said, her tone implying the opposite. "To dedicate oneself to children, it must be very repetitive." A coldness settled in my stomach. I just smiled a tight little smile. It had its rewards. When Ethan returned, the conversation shifted back to their wedding plans, venues in Napa Valley, a dress from a specific designer in Paris. I listened, nodding, feeling myself shrink into the role of the audience member, the spectator to my own son's life. I looked at the way Chloe touched his arm, possessive, and practiced, and at the way Ethan looked at her, utterly dazzled. As I went to bed that night, the unease was a solid weight in my chest. It wasn't jealousy. It was a deep maternal instinct, one I hadn't felt since Ethan was a little boy, and I'd worried about him crossing the street. Something was off. The perfection was too perfect. The warmth wasn't real. And I, with my secret fluency, had caught the subtle disdain in her tone, the way her compliments had sharp hidden edges. I fell asleep telling myself I was being an overprotective, silly old woman. But the seed of doubt was planted. Ethan called a few days later, his voice still bright with happiness. "Chloe loved you, Mom. She thought you were sweet. She wants to have dinner again this Saturday. She's picked out this amazing French place in Northampton, her treat to thank you for cooking." The invitation felt like a command. A French restaurant, her domain. "That's very generous," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "I'd love to." I spent the week in a quiet dread. I pulled out my one good dress, a simple black sheath I'd worn to Daniel's memorial service. It felt like a suit of armor. On Saturday evening, as I got ready, I looked at myself in the mirror, a 58-year-old woman with silver threading her brown hair, laugh lines around her eyes, hands that were more used to garden soil than fine china. I took a deep breath. Just get through the dinner, I told my reflection. The restaurant Le Bistrot was all dark wood, soft lighting, and the low murmur of French conversations. It was authentic, and it immediately made me feel like an imposter. Chloe, of course, looked like she belonged on the cover of its menu. She greeted the maitre d' by name with a fluid stream of Parisian French. He fawned over her. Ethan looked proud. We were seated at a prime table. Chloe took charge of the wine list, ordering a Burgundy with an authority that silenced the sommelier. When the waiter came, she ordered for all of us in rapid French. I caught the slight mispronunciation of foie gras on Ethan's lips as he tried to repeat his order after her. Non, non, mon chéri, she said, patting his hand with a condescending little laugh. It's foie like foie, not foie, she corrected him as if he were a child. Ethan reddened slightly but laughed it off. See what I have to put up with, he said to me, but he was smiling at her adoringly. The food arrived beautiful and intricate. I complimented it sincerely. The conversation was stilted. Chloe and Ethan talked about people I didn't know, places I'd never been. I felt like a ghost at the table. Then as the waiter refilled our water glasses, my elbow bumped my fork. It clattered loudly against my plate, sending a tiny spray of sauce onto the white tablecloth. Oops, clumsy me, I said, my face flushing with heat. Chloe reacted with lightning speed, dabbing at the spot with her napkin. Ce n'est rien, she said to the waiter, then under her breath. But perfectly audible to me, she murmured in a rapid, dismissive French, Elle est si maladroite. Les Américaines de son âge toujours si frustées. The words hung in the air between us. She is so clumsy. American women her age always so crude. My blood turned to ice. I understood every word, every nuance of her contempt. I looked directly at her. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, completely blank, assuming the words were just noise to me. Then she turned her dazzling smile back to the waiter, switching to English. Really, it's fine. In that moment, the vague unease crystallized into cold, hard certainty. This wasn't just a personality clash. This was disdain. She saw me as a bumpkin, an obstacle, a lesser creature. And my son, my good-hearted Ethan, was so blinded by her glamour, he couldn't see it. He hadn't even registered her muttered comment. He was just apologizing for the spilled sauce. I didn't say a word. I smiled a thin, tight smile and finished my meal. But inside, a quiet, steely resolve was forming. This wasn't over. On the drive home, Ethan chatted happily about the food. I was silent, staring out at the passing darkness. You okay, Mum? You're quiet. Just tired, honey. It was a lovely dinner. Thank Chloe for me. But my mind was racing. Gary's words echoed in my head. Your French is still sharper than a chef's knife. It was no longer just a private skill. It had become a tool, a secret lens through which I could see the truth she was hiding from my son. The hook had been set. Now I needed to reel in the proof. The next morning, I couldn't settle. The memory of Chloe's voice, that cool, contemptuous murmur, played on a loop in my mind. Frusts. Crude. It wasn't just an insult. It was a key that unlocked her entire view of us, of me, of Ethan, of our life. I was no longer just a worried mother. I was a witness to a deception. I made a strong pot of coffee and sat at the small desk in the corner of my living room. Daniel's old desk. I opened my laptop, something I used mostly for email and reading the news. With a deep breath, I did something I'd never done before I went looking. I created a blank social media profile, a fake name, a generic picture of a flower, and I searched for Chloe Dubois. I found her easily. Her Instagram was a curated gallery of a flawless life. Pictures of her at glamorous parties, art openings, sunbathing on yachts. Always dressed impeccably, always surrounded by beautiful people and expensive things. But as I scrolled, the pattern emerged. There were no pictures with family, no childhood photos. The captions were in French or English, full of hashtags about luxury and fashion. Her job history was vague, consultant for European luxury brands. I dug deeper, using the few details Ethan had let slip. I found a LinkedIn profile that was barely filled out. I found her name mentioned in a few society columns from years ago, always on the arm of a different wealthy man, an older German industrialist, a Swiss banker. My hands were cold. This wasn't proof of villainy, but it was a portrait of a life built on surfaces and connections, not depth. A life aimed at acquisition. Then I found a buried comment on an old post from what seemed to be a disgruntled former friend. Written in French, it said, Toujours à la chasse. Chloé celui-ci a un compte en banque solide, j'espère. Always on the hunt. Chloe. This one has a solid bank account, I hope. The comment had been deleted, but not before someone had quoted it in a reply. My heart hammered against my ribs. I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't dismiss me as a jealous mother. I called Gary. Anita. Everything okay? He answered, hearing the tension in my voice. I told him everything. The dinner, the muttered insult, my online sleuthing. The words tumbled out in a rush. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Gary. I'm here, he said, his voice grave. Anita, this is bad. You have to tell Ethan. That's just it, I said, my voice breaking. If I go to him with this based on a muttered phrase and some Instagram stalking, what do I look like? I look like the cliché. The possessive mother who can't let go, who's threatened by a beautiful, sophisticated younger woman. He'll choose her. He'll distance himself from me to protect his relationship. I'll lose him. Gary sighed, a heavy sound. You're probably right. Damn it. So what's the plan? You can't just let this go. I need irrefutable proof. I said, the idea forming even as I spoke. I need her to hang herself with her own rope. I need Ethan to hear it from her or to see it so clearly he can't deny it. Okay, Gary said, thinking. So you need to create a situation where she feels safe, superior, and unobserved, where her guard is down. I'm going to invite them for dinner again, here, one last time. The decision felt both terrifying and right. I'll cook another meal, be the same quaint Anita. I'll make her feel so secure in her superiority, so certain I'm a non-entity that she might slip. She might say something to him thinking I don't understand, or to someone else. It's a risk, Gary warned. You're setting yourself up for more pain. What's the alternative? Watch my son marry a woman who sees him as a bank account. My voice was steel now. I taught verb conjugations for 30 years, Gary. I have the patience for this, and I have the vocabulary. He chuckled, a dry, approving sound. All right, Professor. Just promise me you'll record it. Not illegally, but have your phone nearby, in your pocket, for your own protection. I agreed. After we hung up, I sat for a long time staring at the garden. The peaceful life I had built felt like it was shattering. But beneath the fear, I felt a strange, quiet strength. This wasn't about me being right. This was about protecting my child. I was no longer just Anita, the retired teacher. I was a mother on a mission. I called Ethan that evening, my voice carefully light. Honey, I had such a nice time at the restaurant. Chloe was so generous. I'd love to return the favor. Why don't you both come for a quiet dinner here next Saturday? My treat. I'll make that chicken recipe your father loved. Ethan sounded delighted. That sounds perfect, Mom. Chloe will love a quiet night in. I doubted that very much, but I just smiled into the phone. Wonderful, I'll see you then. The week of preparation was different this time. It wasn't about anxiety, it was about strategy. I planned the menu meticulously: roast chicken with herbes de Provence, scalloped potatoes, haricots verts. Simple, delicious, non-threatening. I cleaned, but I didn't polish away the character of my home. Let her see our quaint life. I practiced my part, the slightly awkward, overly eager mother-in-law. I would be harmless. I would be invisible. The night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror again. This time, I didn't see an old woman. I saw a woman with a secret weapon, a lifetime of knowledge tucked away behind a kind smile. I saw a mother who was about to go to war for her son, not with shouting, but with silence, and then with perfectly chosen words. Saturday arrived heavy with unspoken tension, at least for me. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen windows as I put the finishing touches on the meal. The house smelled of roasting chicken and rosemary. I had set the table with the blue linen cloth again, using my plain white dishes. Nothing to intimidate. Everything was designed to make Chloe feel comfortably superior. My phone was in the pocket of my cardigan, set to voice memo, just as Gary had suggested. It felt like a betrayal, but also a necessary insurance policy. I needed a record, if only for myself and for Ethan, if things went as badly as I feared they might. Ethan's car pulled up right on time. Watching them walk up the path, they looked like a perfect couple from a catalogue. Ethan carried a bottle of wine, his face open and happy. Chloe wore another impossibly chic outfit, a silk blouse and tailored trousers, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mom, something smells amazing," Ethan said, hugging me. "Anita, thank you for having us again," Chloe said, offering the double-cheek kiss. Her perfume was different tonight, even more subtle. "How cozy your home is." "Please come in," I said, playing my part. "Dinner is just about ready." The first part of the evening unfolded with a strange, polite normalcy. We sat in the living room with glasses of wine. Ethan did most of the talking, telling me about a case he'd won. Chloe sat beside him, one hand resting on his arm, nodding occasionally. She contributed little, only making the odd, slightly corrective comment. "It was the Ritz-Carlton, Ethan, not just the Ritz," she said with a light laugh when he described a client dinner. Each correction was a tiny needle, and Ethan just absorbed them with a good-natured shrug. During dinner, the pattern continued. The food was, if I do say so myself, excellent. The chicken was moist, the skin crisp and herby. "This is delicious, Anita," Ethan said with his mouth full just like he had as a boy. "Très bon," Chloe said, taking a delicate bite. "Very comforting." The pause before comforting was a masterpiece of condescension. I smiled my grateful, unassuming smile. "I'm so glad you like it." As the meal progressed and the wine bottle emptied, I watched Chloe carefully. The alcohol, the familiar setting of my quaint home, the perceived lack of a threat, it began to have an effect. Her posture loosened. The perfectly modulated tone of her voice took on a slight bored edge. She began speaking to Ethan more in French, short comments, and asides, assuming the curtain of language made her private. She complimented the green beans, then said to Ethan in a low, rapid French, Ethan, whose French was limited to menu items, just smiled and nodded, not fully grasping the faint damning of the praise. My heart was a cold, hard stone in my chest. I kept my eyes on my plate, my expression one of pleasant absorption in the meal. Inside, I was translating, cataloging each phrase, a brick in the wall of evidence she was building against herself. Then came the moment Ethan got up to use the restroom. The click of the bathroom door down the hall seemed to echo. Chloe and I were alone at the table. The silence stretched for a beat too long. She picked up her phone, glanced at it, and sighed a dramatic, world-weary sound. She held the phone to her ear, pretending to listen to a voice message, and then in a voice just loud enough to carry, she began to speak in French. It was a monologue of breathtaking cruelty. I didn't move a muscle. The voice memo on my phone was a silent witness. She went on, her voice dripping with venomous amusement. Then came the words that turned my blood to ice. She pretended to listen to her message again, then sighed. Crude, boorish. And the plan laid bare: secure the money, then leave. In that moment, time stopped. The insult to me was nothing. The insult to my son, the cold, calculated betrayal of his love, the reduction of his dreams to a comedy, it ignited a fury in me so pure and white-hot, it felt like clarity. All my doubts were confirmed. All my fears were realized. The woman my son wanted to build a life with saw him as a mark, a bank account, a stepping stone. I heard the toilet flush down the hall. Ethan was coming back. Chloe put her phone down, a look of bored satisfaction on her face, completely unaware that her performance had had an audience of one who understood every single damning word. The footsteps approached. The air in the dining room was thick enough to choke on. I could feel the phantom heat of the phone in my pocket, a tiny silent accomplice. Chloe picked up her wine glass, taking a slow sip, her expression one of someone who had just endured a minor inconvenience. She had no idea. None. Ethan reappeared at the doorway, his smile easy. "Sorry about that. What did I miss?" He looked from Chloe to me. I was still sitting perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. My heart was no longer hammering. It was beating a slow, deliberate, powerful rhythm. The fear was gone, burned away by the truth. All that was left was a profound, icy calm. I looked at my son, my sweet, trusting boy, who believed in fairy tales. Then I turned my gaze to Chloe. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at her and I smiled. It wasn't my pleasant hostess smile. It was a small, cold, knowing smile. Then I spoke. I used the French I had taught for 3 decades. Not the French of a tourist or a student, but the clear, precise Parisian-accented French of a former professor. My voice was quiet, measured, and it cut through the room like a scalpel. Je vous remercie pour votre franchise, Chloé. I thank you for your candor, Chloé. Her head snapped toward me. The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Her eyes, those cool grey eyes, widened in pure, uncomprehending shock. I continued my tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. C'est vrai que les soirées peuvent sembler longues quand on joue un rôle. Je le conçois tout à fait. It's true that evenings can seem long when one is playing a role. I quite understand. Her face went as white as the tablecloth. The blood drained from it so completely, I thought she might faint. She was a statue, a beautiful, horrified statue. Quant à votre projet de quitter mon fils après avoir sécurisé l'argent, I went on tilting my head slightly. Je pense qu'il est temps d'en discuter tous les trois, dans une langue que nous comprenons tous. As for your plan to leave my son after having secured the money, I think it is time we discussed it. All three of us, in a language we all understand. I finally turned my full attention to Ethan, who was standing frozen in the doorway, his brow furrowed in utter confusion. Ethan, mon chéri, I said, switching to English, my voice gentle but firm. Come sit down, please. What? What is going on? Ethan asked, his voice strained. He looked at Chloe's ghostly face, then back at me. Mom, you speak French. I was a French teacher for 30 years, Ethan, I said softly. I speak it quite well. I kept my eyes on Chloe. Now, Chloe, would you like to tell Ethan what you just shared with your phone, or shall I? Chloe found her voice, but it was a thin, shrill thing, stripped of all its former confidence. I don't know what you're talking about. You misunderstood. You're twisting my words. She switched to English, her accent suddenly more pronounced in her panic. Ethan, she is making things up. She hates me because I am not American. The desperation in her voice was pathetic. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her unravel. Mom! Ethan's voice was pleading lost. Check my phone, Ethan, I said calmly, slipping it from my pocket and placing it on the table. In the voice memos. I started recording when we sat down. I didn't want to believe what I was hearing earlier in the evening, but you should hear what she said when you left the room. Hear it for yourself. The look of sheer, undiluted terror that flashed across Chloe's face was all the confirmation Ethan needed. He didn't move to take the phone. He just stared at her, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning horrific understanding. It's not true, Chloe shrieked, standing up so fast her chair screeched back. She is a liar, an old jealous woman. Her words hung in the air, the final ugly mask falling away. In her panic, she had called me exactly what she thought I was. The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. He saw the fury, the malice, the lack of any semblance of the woman he thought he loved. The illusion shattered in an instant. Get out, he said, his voice low and trembling with a rage I had never heard in him before. What? She gasped. Get out of my mother's house, he said, each word a block of ice. Now. For a second she hesitated, looking between us, as if calculating a last, desperate play. Then she saw the finality in Ethan's eyes. With a strangled sound that was half sob, half snarl, she snatched her purse from the floor and fled. The front door slammed so hard, the windows rattled. And then there was silence. The kind of silence that comes after a storm has ripped through, leaving devastation in its wake. Ethan stood rooted to the spot, his shoulders slumping. He looked at the ruined dinner table, at the empty chair, and then at me. The pain in his eyes was a physical blow. I stood up slowly and walked over to him. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't say anything. I just opened my arms. And my 32-year-old son, my successful lawyer, buried his face in my shoulder and wept. In the days that followed, a heavy quiet settled over my house and over my son. Ethan took a few days off work. He stayed with me, not talking much, just existing in the space of his shattered world. I didn't push. I made simple meals, soup sandwiches, and let the silence be. The voice memo on my phone was never played. It wasn't needed. The look on Chloe's face, the venom in her own words, and her final panicked outburst had been proof enough. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the fireflies, he finally spoke. "Did you know?" he asked, his voice rough. "The whole time." "Not the whole time," I said honestly. "I had a bad feeling. At that first dinner. Then at the restaurant she muttered something in French, thinking I wouldn't understand. That's when I knew for sure she wasn't who she pretended to be." "Why didn't you tell me then?" I sighed, choosing my words carefully. "What would I have said, Ethan? Your fiancé thinks I'm crude. You were in love. You would have defended her. You would have thought I was being sensitive, or worse, jealous. I needed you to see it for yourself, or hear it for yourself. I'm sorry. I know it was a terrible risk." He was quiet for a long time. "You learned French in college, right? For teaching. But you were always just Mom. You never talked about it. I never heard you speak it." "It was my job," I said with a small shrug. "It wasn't who I was at home with you and your father. It was just a skill like gardening or making pie crust. It didn't seem important to flaunt." I paused. Until it was the most important thing in the world. He reached over and took my hand, his grip tight. "I feel like such a fool." "Don't," I said firmly. "You have a good heart. You see the best in people. That's not a weakness, Ethan. That's a strength she tried to exploit. The fool is the person who mistakes kindness for stupidity." Over the next few weeks, Ethan began to piece himself back together. With the clarity of hindsight and his lawyer's mind, he did his own digging. He found the patterns I had seen, the vague past, the series of wealthy older companions. He discovered she had significant debts in France that she'd been desperate to clear. His proposed life in America was to be her escape hatch, her financial reset. The anger came, and it was a healthy cleansing fire. He changed his passwords, secured his accounts, and sent a terse legal cease and desist communication through his firm when she tried to contact him with a fabricated story about me being unstable. He didn't engage. He simply shut the door. Our relationship changed through that fire. It was no longer just mother and son. It was two adults who had faced a profound deception together. He saw me not just as the woman who raised him, but as a person with depth history and a quiet ferocity he never knew I possessed. And I saw him not as my little boy to protect, but as a strong, resilient man who could weather a storm and come out wiser. One Saturday he drove up again, this time with a bag of fresh bagels and a determined look. "I have an idea," he said. "That class you mentioned at the library, the one for seniors who want to learn French. You should do it." I had mentioned it in passing, a dream I'd shelved. "You think—" "I know," he said. "Mom, you have this whole part of you that you put away. Don't. Share it." So I did. I went to the community center and proposed the class. It started small, just 5 of us in a sunny room. But as I stood there diagramming a verb, tense on a whiteboard, a feeling of rightness settled over me. I wasn't just teaching French. I was sharing a love of language, of connection. I was using my skill for joy again, not as a weapon. The final piece of healing came unexpectedly. I was in the garden up to my elbows in soil when Ethan visited. He sat on the porch step watching me. "I'm seeing someone," he said a little cautiously. "Her name is Clara. She's a librarian. She has a cat named after a Bronte sister. She laughs at my jokes, even the bad ones." I wiped my hands on my jeans and smiled a real easy smile. "She sounds wonderful." "She is," he said. And the first thing I did when we started getting serious was tell her my mother is a secret French ninja who can bring down fiancés with a single sentence. I threw a clod of dirt at him. He laughed. And the sound was so free, so light, it healed something in my own soul. Looking back now from the other side of that terrible dinner, I see it not as a night of betrayal, but as a night of awakening. For both of us. The greatest lessons aren't always gentle. Sometimes truth has to break through like a thunderclap. I learned that silence can be a choice, and a powerful one. But I also learned that there is a time to break that silence, to use your voice with precision and courage. My value was never in how Chloe or anyone else saw me, the quaint old woman, the crude American. It was in the life I had built, the knowledge I carried, and the fierce quiet love I had for my family. Ethan learned that love shouldn't feel like a performance. It shouldn't make you feel small or foolish for your dreams. Real love, the kind that builds a life, is built on respect, on seeing and being seen, not on facades and financial plans. That phone with its damning recording, I deleted it. I didn't need to hold on to the poison. The memory was lesson enough. Now my life is full in a different way. My class at the library has grown. Ethan and Clara come for dinner often, and the house is filled with real laughter, the kind that comes from easy companionship. I still tend my garden. I still miss Daniel. But I am at peace. The woman who spoke perfect French at the dinner table that night didn't emerge from nowhere. She was always there. She was the teacher, the mother, the widow, the gardener. She just finally found the moment where all those parts of her needed to speak in one clear, undeniable voice. So I'll leave you with this thought and a question. Have you ever had a moment where you had to find a voice you didn't know you had? A moment where staying silent was no longer an option? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story of quiet strength and finding truth resonated with you, please give this video a like. It lets me know what matters to you. And if you want to hear more stories about the unexpected turns of life, of family, and of finding your power later in life, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Sharing this video might just help someone else who needs to hear that it's never too late to speak your truth. Thank you so much for listening, for being part of this community. And remember, the most powerful weapons are often the ones people never see coming. Be well.